Hey guys, this is Yoda. This will be my Prot Paladin guide for Season 3 of The War Within. We're going to be focusing on Mythic Plus in this guide. So, how strong is Prot Paladin in Season 3? In my opinion, Prot Paladin is pretty strong for Season 3. It is somewhere between Season 1 and Season 2. Season 1, obviously, it was giga broken, but we did get a lot of nerfs. Season 2 featured a lot of things that were very difficult for Prot Paladin to deal with, such as Prior to the Sacred Flame in general, like 4 different things about it. And also meld skips. Good news, the meld skips can now be dealt with. There's a new potion in the game called Armor and Sentia. This does share a cooldown with your Tempered Pot, but, you know, if you told me I could sacrifice my pot to meld skip in Season 2, I would definitely take that deal. Basically, you just push it, and it pushes Shadow Meld. That's the whole thing. Very useful. Also, Prior to Sacred Flame in general has been completely reworked. You want to go right, and the first mini boss has been nerfed. Going right makes the first boss easier, and also you don't have to worry about the left side like a bunch of AoE kicks. Basically, all the things that made Priory extremely difficult for Paladin are gone. So Season 3 is looking pretty good for Paladin. The tier set is really good, and also you get to play Lightsmith. In my opinion, Lightsmith is quite superior to Templar on Mythic Plus. Even in Season 2, I think it's probably better to play Lightsmith, even though it's worse damage-wise. Speaking of Lightsmith, here is my default build. Keep in mind there are a lot of flex points in the Paladin tree. On the right side, most of this is going to be pretty not flex, although some people do like playing Moment of Glory. I personally despise this talent, so I will not be playing it. But you will see many top tank players decide to spec into this for some reason. I don't like it, as I mentioned, but it's viable for sure. Inspiring Vanguard is also viable. You need to kind of drop spell warding for it. If there's a dungeon that you don't need spell warding, you just drop it for Inspiring Vanguard. If you want to drop one of these talents for Inspiring Vanguard, you can also do that. Definitely going to be a damage gain, especially if you drop 5 tier. Dropping this, I think, is not a damage gain. But yeah, those are your choices on the right side. On the left side, we have a bunch of utility that I'm not taking in the default tree. Like we have Dispel, we have Freedom, 2% avoidance plus speed. We have Bop, which you might not need Bop. So there's a lot of points here you can kind of flex around depending on the dungeon. Obviously, you have Freedom too. 20-second forbearance, also useful sometimes. Yeah, there are a lot of things you can change around. You'll see the things I kind of went over. Oh yeah, down here you have Righteous Protection, which is the Blessing of Sacrifice, immunes the person to poison and disease. You can lead the charge for that. For a list of all the changes, or all like the potential flexes you have, definitely reference the document, which will be attached to this video. You can also play Templar, however, as I mentioned, Lightsmith, in my opinion, is superior to Templar. If you want to play Templar, then you basically just drop Bulwark of Righteous Fury for Inmost Light, and then that's the only talent change you need to do. You do need to play Eye of Tear, obviously, so you can't play Moment of Glory, really. And you can also drop Bastion of Light for back to Bulwark if you really want to. Also, Uther's Counsel, I forgot to mention, is perfectly viable as well. It is definitely worse than Season 1, obviously. It's half the talent point. Personally, I have been trying to not play this since before, like in Dragonflight, this talent already existed and you didn't play it. But it is always there to give you lower cooldown on Bubble, Lay on Hands, and Bop. Alright, for your stats. So there is another video on this that I made in Season 1. Be sure to reference that if you have a lot more questions. But basically, you really want crit haste. The current tier set, we're going to mouse over it now, has insane crit synergies. Basically, whenever you proc Hammer and Anvil, which will go here to show that, Hammer and Anvil, Judgment critical strikes, and also from the tier set, Blessed Hammer critical strikes, now proc Hammer and Anvil, so you really want to be critting on your Judgments and Blessed Hammers. And now the hits grant a stack of Masterwork. So Masterwork basically goes up to 5, and at 5 stacks, or if you use one of your Holy Bulwark or a Sacred Weapon below 5 stacks, or if you Wings, by the way, Wings also uses a Sacred Weapon, then it consumes all of the Masterwork stacks to put a lesser weapon on someone. So if you look at my damage breakdown for my last key, lesser weapon is my highest and Hammer and Anvil second. Playing Prot Paladin basically next season and doing damage is all going to be all about maximizing the tier set. And for that, you want as much crit haste as possible. Now there is also another mechanic for Prot Paladin called Spell Block. So you have this talent, Improved Holy Shield. You have 8% increased spell block, and this talent increases your block by 10% when you use Avenger Shield. And this talent increases your block by 30% when you use Word of Glory. So basically, with all of these together, you have 48% increased chance to block spells. And you can increase your block by getting more mastery to get to 52. So once you get to 52% block, if you activate all of your your 2 things that increase your block chance, then you have 100% spell block, which means any spell that is blockable is now going to deal significantly reduced damage to you. Very relevant for things like random bolts that target the tank, or even like random tank busters, There's a whole slew of things that affect the tank that are blockable magic things that Paladin can take advantage of. So in most dungeons, you are going to want enough mastery to take advantage of that. The exact number you need, and I wouldn't go over this if possible, is I believe 10,800 if you do not have a shaman, and it is 9,420 with a shaman. Not 100% sure about those numbers, but they are definitely going to be referenced in the doc. After that amount, you don't really want any more mastery because crit and haste are so good. In fact, I would even go above the DR. I would go like basically like 25,000 haste and 25,000 crit before I even cared about other stats. Since crit and haste are so valuable and you need a certain amount of mastery, verse basically, even though it should be good for Prot Paladin, is actually not valued because crit and haste are so good. Prot Paladin scales like crazy with stats. So those are your stats. For trinkets, right now the 2 trinkets I have equipped are, in my opinion, the 2 best trinkets for Prot Paladin and Mythic Plus. They are unfortunately both from the raid. Brand of Ceaseless Ire is basically just going to be the best for all tanks after the recent buff it got, 20% damage. It functions similar to Eye of Kazan from last season, where basically it stacks up to 15 while you're in combat and taking damage. It gets 1 stack every 15 seconds. And while you're out of combat, it drops stacks, and then you can like build them back up when you enter combat. You really want to be chaining combat with this trinket equipped, if possible, or just like not out of combat for too long. And it does crazy damage. If we look at my damage breakdown from the last boss of Halls, it is 13.6% of my damage. And it also does do increased damage up in AoE. For my overall, it's 8% of my overall. And on top of that, it's actually also doing some amount of shielding. So if you look at healing done, we'd have to scroll a bit, it's not that crazy. It's like 4.5% of my healing. So like a non-zero amount of healing plus 8% of your damage isn't insane for a trinket, especially when that damage is weighted on single target. So this is going to be the best trinket by far. The other trinket you wear kind of depends. If you are a raider and you have access to Unyielding Nether Prism and you want to do big damage, this is a pretty good trinket for Prot Paladin. It does not have secondaries, unfortunately, but it is one of the on uses that sync with wings, because you can use this trinket whenever you want. It doesn't really have a cooldown. There's like a 20-second cooldown, but you can, like, you know, you don't really use it every 20 seconds. You basically use it whenever you have your wings up. You can also delay it. You can use it every other wings. Like if your next wings is going to be with Lust, you can choose not to use your trinket with that wings. For that reason, I have wings bound. Like you can see my normal wings is a bind with the trinket, and then I have wings down here without trinket, in case you actually want to do that. But this is going to be your best damage trinket, since a lot of your damage is going to be like in wings. So having an on use for that obviously is going to be very powerful. If you do not raid or you do not want to play this trinket, then you can always just play Celia's Secret Technique. This is going to be the best stat stick in the game for pretty much all stats. You just put it on haste or crit, whoever, you know, in your party has that. If you don't have this, then obviously the other stat sticks are fine. Say Pacemaker did get nerfed, but it's still fine. Sackbird is also okay. They're just going to be worse than Secret Technique. So if you can, just farm the Secret Technique. Another trinket is All Devouring Nucleus. So this does come to the last boss in the raid, and it is a cheat death trinket. I generally don't recommend playing this for most tanks, but specifically for Prot Paladin, this trinket is actually not bad. Most of the time when you die as Prot Paladin, you can like quickly be healed above like the threshold, so you're very unlikely to actually die through it. And in high keys, you know, if your tank ever dies, it is GG, and tank and Paladin does not have a cheat death naturally, so this is a way to get a cheat death. Obviously, you are going to take a massive damage hit because it doesn't have any main stat, and you're losing basically either Nether Prism or Secret Technique. And you are losing a lot of passive survivability. Flipping this, I would expect like roughly a 10% hit to damage. Very, very small hit to passive survivability, because it does have like some healing attached to it. Overall, I would recommend wearing this if it's like your first time doing the key level, or if you're like kind of worried about not getting healed enough, basically. You could consider this, but most of the time I would say Nether Prism is probably going to be superior. Another trinket that is worth talking about is Codex of the First Technique. No one really knows how good this is going to be for Prot Paladin. Right now we're on the PTR, it's like the last week of PTR, and this trinket is still bugged. Basically right now it's supposed to absorb 1.7 million per blow, and it lasts for 12 seconds, but right now I think it's only absorbing 1.7 million total, and it lasts like 3 seconds. So if they ever fix that, when this trinket was relevant in Shadowlands, it was by far the best trinket in the game that we had ever had. So if that, you know, happens again, then obviously you'll want to wear it. So it's worth mentioning, but right now it's bugged and completely terrible, so don't worry about it. If it ever does get fixed though, it will be good. Alright, next we're going to talk about your embellishments. So first thing you need to know about embellishments is that they don't matter. Embellishments are completely irrelevant. At most, I think the best one is like slightly more than 1% of a damage increase over no embellishment. So If you get the wrong embellishment, it's probably going to be off by like 0.1%, so who really cares? In terms of crafting, I do recommend crafting a sword and a shield at the start of the season, unless you are going to have access to like a mythic one from either your vaults or from the raid for like a really big boost early on. I think that covers most of the gearing. Go crit haste, brand is the best trinket, etc. Now for actual gameplay. So one of the things that Prot Paladin does really well is solo interrupts. The way you do that is you spam Avenger Shield on the target, obviously, and you have a way to reset Avenger Shield, which is called, if we go in the passives, Grand Crusader. Whenever you avoid a melee attack or use Blessed Hammer, you have 50% chance to reduce the reset the cooldown on Avenger Shield. So basically what's happening is whenever there's a caster mob, you prioritize Avenger Shield as an interrupt, and you don't use Avenger Shield for anything except interrupting. So every time you can interrupt it, you use Avenger Shield on it. If you don't have Avenger Shield, then you use Rebuke. And then if you don't have any of them, then you can use like either call someone to backup kick, or you can use your stun. And then the next level of this is Divine Toll. So Divine Toll throws a shield at 4 random enemies and your target. So if I target this guy, even though there's like 30 mobs around here, or maybe like 10, it's always going to throw a shield at him. The other thing is, you can see this bar that's ticking down. This is Resonance. Every time it reaches this tick, it's going to throw a shield. That's from this talent, as we mentioned, Resonance. Every 5 seconds for 15 seconds. So you can technically, while Resonance is going, you can solo 2 mobs. So basically your Avenger Shield is going to silence your target for 3 seconds, and then 2 seconds later it's throwing a shield. So unless their cast is less than 2 seconds, they're getting kicked. So the way you solo mobs with Resonance is you would set this mob to focus, and then you would target this one, and basically you have a macro to cast Rebuke, which is your kick, and Avenger Shield at your focus. And then so you would cover this one with Resonance, like you would Divine Toll, targeting this one. Then whenever this casts, you use Focus Avenger Shield. Or, you know, if you don't have Avenger Shield, Focus Rebuke. And then if you don't have any of them, then you can stun it. But usually, like, the first 15 seconds of pull, you're going to get enough shield resets that you can just Focus Avenger Shield it over and over again, especially in a big pull. So that is how you solo a pack / solo interrupt the mob, or dual, or like solo interrupt 2 mobs while you have Resonance. So if you want to dual interrupt 2 mobs for as long as possible, then you basically solo this one with Resonance for as long as you can, while using, like, basically a good metric to think of is you can solo a mob forever if you're allowed to use Hammer of Justice on it. Because basically you're going to get enough, most of the time, unless you get unlucky, you always get enough Avenger Shield resets to interrupt it. If you can also back up with Rebuke. The only way you actually can't interrupt it is if these are both on cooldown, then you can Hodge. And then the chances that these are both on cooldown and it's casting again in 30 seconds is very low. So generally, you can just solo a mob with these like 3 buttons. So if you have Resonance covering this one, especially in Lust, then you can always Focus Avenger Shield and Focus Kick this one. Then at the end of your Resonance, you can Hodge this and then just focus on soloing this one. You will not have your Hodge for backup in this case, in which case you use Blinding Light for backup. One other thing to note here is that you have this talent Punishment. Successfully interrupting gives you an extra Blessed Hammer. Now, Avenger Shield is bugged. Sometimes it will like silence the mob before interrupting them, so it won't give you an extra Blessed Hammer. And then also there's an ICD on this, which is 1 second. So if your GCD is faster than 1 second, or if you just like Divine Toll a bunch of things, then you're still only getting 1 Blessed Hammer a second. Also worth noting, by the way, remember your tier set procs off Blessed Hammer. Blessed Hammer procs Hammer and Anvil, and Hammer and Anvil gives you Masterwork. Also, this tier set is bugged right now, or the tooltip is wrong. It doesn't mention a change they did somewhere in the PTR, where if you are at 5 stacks of Masterwork, which happens like pretty quick, as long as like after your first 5 crits, every time you crit again, it gives you either a lesser weapon or a lesser bulwark. So you really want to be maximizing your interrupts to get as many Blessed Hammers as possible, which gives you as many Hammer and Anvils, which gives you as many lesser bulwarks and lesser weapons as possible, which is increasing your damage and your self-healing by quite a lot. So that's interrupts. And then how to actually play. So when you are not interrupting, when you have interrupts available, you're only going to use Avenger Shield as an interrupt, and you're going to prioritize that over literally everything because it's a double global, right? You get the Avenger Shield and you get the Blessed Hammer from Punishment. If you can't do that, then we're going to prioritize Judgment, especially in wings. So Judgment, you have this talent, Zealot's Paragon, which makes your Judgment extend your wings. And we have this talent, Crusader's Judgment. Sorry, it's not this one. It's this one? Yes, okay. Avenging Wrath causes Judgment to generate 1 additional holy power. So especially in wings, we're going to be prioritizing Judgment. Also remember, Judgment procs Hammer and Anvil, which procs your tier set. So especially in Wings, we're going to prioritize Judgment if we have 2 charges. If we do not have 2 charges, like if we have 1 charge or 0, then your next priority is going to be Blessed Hammer. And that is a change from normal. Normally in Wings, you would want to prioritize Hammer of Wrath. But now we're going to prioritize Blessed Hammer at 3 charges because we really want to be casting as many Blessed Hammers as possible for the tier set. Now in Wings, this changes. So if you've already used the Blessed Hammer and Judgment, they're both cooling down, and you have Hammer of Wrath available, then Hammer of Wrath is really good to push because it procs Zealot's Paragon. However, you definitely want to end your Wings at 0 stacks of Blessed Hammer, like 0 charges. So if Wings is going to end anyway, you could just like use like your last 2 Blessed Hammers instead of using Hammer of Wrath, basically, even though it extends it. So that's how you play your Wings with interrupts available. I know it's gonna be like really complicated the first time doing it if there's interrupts, but once you do it a bunch, you'll lose second nature. So if there's no interrupts, that completely changes how you play. Now you basically only push Avenger's Shield to maintain defensive buffs. So there's this buff, block chance for 10 seconds. And there's this buff, which is parry chance for 15. So if you keep this up, you will keep the other one up basically automatically. So make sure you throw 1 shield every 10 seconds. But don't throw more than that if it's not going to be an interrupt. And then we're just going to prioritize being able to push buttons. So we're going to use Judgment if we have full charges, and then Blessed Hammer if we have full charges. And then if you've already done both, then you can Judgment again, or you can like spend more Blessed Hammers, or you can use Word of Glory. But basically, your goal is to maximize when you're not in Wings, there's a very high chance that you can't push any of these 2 buttons. So you want to maximize like having both of them cooling down at the same time. In Wings, however, since you have access to Hammer of Wrath, which is actually a really good button, you don't care as much about that, especially if you have interrupts available. If you have interrupts available, then, you know, Avenger's Shield plus resets is suddenly like a whole new button that you have to push. So you're really not worried about running out of buttons. You just want to push like the best one possible. But like if you're not in Wings, or if interrupts are happening not that often, then suddenly you care way more about keeping these on cooldown properly. So that's the basics of your rotation. But yeah, these are the main buttons you want to push. Obviously, also we do have Consecrate. So one thing to keep in mind, again, additional thing to keep in mind is Divine Guidance. So every 5 finishers, you want to push Consecrate. So you can see I'm going to use a finisher. It's giving me 1 stack here that I'm tracking. It goes up to 5. At 5 stacks, you really want to push Divine Guidance, which is Consecrate. You kind of want to push Consecrate like every 11 seconds anyway, just to keep it up. So you're basically having Divine Guidance. Doesn't make you push that many more Consecrates, but it does make you push a few more. And it does kind of guarantee that you're going to be in it anyway, so this is a good talent to have. One note about Divine Guidance is that it splits damage and healing. So if any of your allies or you are like near you when you push Consecrate, like if you're not full health and you're near some unhealthy allies, then pushing Consecrate will Divine Guidance and heal them for a lot, and you will lose a lot of damage. So ideally you push it not near wounded allies so you can use it to do more damage. Obviously, if you actually need to heal them, you can push it, but you have many other ways to heal them that are not losing you infinite damage, so try to use those instead. All right, so that is the rotation. Next, we'll talk about how to use your Holy Bulwark and Sacred Weapon. So the first thing about the tier set is that every time you use Holy Bulwark or Sacred Weapon, it consumes all of your Masterworks to give 5 lesser things to your allies. Using Sacred Weapon is like neutral in terms of lesser weapons because like it'll spend 5 Masterworks to give 5 weapons out. Then your next 5 Masterworks, which would have generated 5 lesser weapons anyway, are just going to instead build the 5 stacks. So Sacred Weapon is basically lesser weapon neutral, but Holy Bulwark is lesser weapon negative. Like if you have 5 Masterwork stacks and you use Holy Bulwark, it's going to shoot out 5 lesser bulwarks, but that is like, you know, worse. Then that's like all of them are guaranteed to be, all of those Masterwork stacks are guaranteed to be lesser bulwarks. Where if you use it as Sacred Weapon, they're all guaranteed to be Sacred Weapons. Sorry, I actually misspoke. Sacred Weapon is not, it's actually lesser weapon positive. The reason is when you're at 5 Masterwork stacks and you proc Hammer and Anvil, you will get a random lesser weapon or lesser bulwark. But if you use Sacred Weapon, then all 5 of those Masterwork stacks will become lesser weapons. So you want to use Sacred Weapon as many times as possible. Also keep in mind when you wings, it does consume all your Masterwork stacks, and you want to use Holy Bulwark basically only at 0 stacks of Masterwork. So the idea is you just wait till you have 2 stacks of Sacred Weapon and then send both, and make sure Sacred Weapon is in front. So the way you do that is as soon as the key starts, you just, like right before it starts, you just Holy Bulwark yourself, or Holy Bulwark someone, and then you'll have Sacred Weapon in front. And then you always just use both of them together. If you ever do need to like use Sacred Weapon to like heal someone with Tempered in battle, or Holy Bulwark to actually save someone, that is better than like playing to absolutely min-max your damage. But ideally, that is how you want to be playing to min-max damage. All right, next we're going to talk about how to not go on Prot Paladin, since I know a lot of people seem to have many issues with Prot Paladin. So first thing you need to know about not going is never Word of Glory anyone except yourself, unless they are literally going to die in the next tick. Word of Glory on other people has been significantly nerfed many times, and it costs you a lot of mana. So whenever you do it, you're basically giving up. You're basically like risking going whenever you do it. And if you do it multiple times in the same fight, you're definitely risking going especially if you're in danger. The next thing you need to know about going is that Lay on Hands is a very low cooldown with our talent build. So we have Tyrion's Devotion, reducing the cooldown, and we also have Laying Down Arms. Whenever you lose an armament, with cooldown is also significantly reduced. So let's say you're at like 25% health, and you could Word of Glory yourself like 4 times to top yourself, or just push 1 Lay on Hands. So whenever you can Lay on Hands yourself, you should look to do that instead of Word of Glorying yourself. Also, one other thing, you don't really want to push Word of Glory in Wings in order to do more damage, but if you need to Word of Glory yourself, like let's say you're like sitting like 60% and Wings is about to be up, I would definitely wait for Wings before pushing that Word of Glory, because if you Word of Glory outside Wings, it's going to do like nothing. Whereas in Wings, you have something called, I believe here, it shows your Sacred Weapon casts spells and echoes the effects of your Holy Power ability. So in Wings, not only are you way more likely to crit the Wings because you have extra crit and doing more healing, you also have this weapon. So basically in Wings, your Word of Glory actually heals for a lot. So try to take advantage of that as well. So that's basically how you don't go next, we're going to talk about your cooldown rotation. So the hardest part about Prot Paladin is actually, in my opinion, managing your cooldowns. You do have a lot of them, like we have Tear if you play that, Bubble, Spell Word, Bop, Ardent, Guardian, and even Ranging Wrath sometimes can count as a cooldown, and Lay on Hands. How do we manage all of this? So the hardest part is, first you need to identify what type of pack you're fighting against. How dangerous is the pack? So if the pack is like, let's say the Cathedral Pole in Priory, or maybe the Bazaar Pole in Streets, that pack is going to be omega dangerous like the entire time you're fighting it. You basically need to have a cooldown rolling the entire time, right? Like if your cooldown ever drops in that pool of Priory, you're basically going to get one shot and have a Prot Pally moment. So how are we going to play around that? You need to have a strong cooldown the whole time, and on top of that, your strong cooldown needs to be paired with an HPS cooldown in order to not like stress your healer out too much, because your healer's probably gonna be busy in those pulls. So as an example, HPS cooldowns are like Lay on Hands, Wings, and Sacred Weapon. So as an example of that, you could like Ardent with your Wings, then once Ardent falls, like you don't need to pair like Ardent with an HPS cooldown because you have Wings. Then after that, you could use another strong cooldown like Garden of Ancient Kings, and then you could also use Divine Shield. And you can also, in a lot of those types of pulls, a lot of the damage you're taking is magic. So if you spell word yourself, that also counts as a cooldown. Like, let's say like half the damage you're taking is magic. Well, if you spell word yourself, that's basically a 50% DR, right? So another common combo you can use is Eye of Tear plus Lay on Hands. Like Eye of Tear itself is a pretty weak cooldown, it's only 25%. So you can expect to like lose health in Eye of Tear, but you can expect to not get one shot. So you're gonna like lose health, bang, Lay on Hands. Also with Imperial Ward, it does give you a little bit of extra holy power, or sorry, a little bit of extra armor, even though like it's not really worth tracking, it doesn't do that much. So that's the first type of pull. Once you're out of cooldowns, you can either call for Healer External or Kite or die. Basically, if you're fighting that type of pull and it's alive for like what? You have Wings, Ardent, Tear, probably second Ardent, Guardian, and Bubble, and Spellward. Like if it's alive for a whole minute, like the whole thing is alive for a whole minute, then you're probably gonna die or have to kite. It is what it is, but you know, hopefully it's not alive for that long. The next type of pull we're going to talk about is the pull that's only difficult because of Tank Buster. So we're going to open MDT here. Now Tank Busters have many forms. So in Dawnbreaker, this is a perfect example. In a pull like this, you need to identify which mobs are actually dangerous for you, right? So there's Curse Blade, Shadow Walker, Darkcaster, Shadow, Tactician, and Commander. So in this pull, the Shadow Walker and the Curse Blade are made to hit the tank, and the Commander and Tactician are also made to hit the tank, but basically you need to worry about the big mobs, right? You need to worry about Tank Busters. Before, like the Shadow Walker would have a Tank Buster, but that's gone now. So what Tank Busters do these have? Well, there's this Commander, it has Tainted Slash. So this is a Tank Buster. You're going to want to have a cooldown for that. And then there's also this Tactician. This Tactician has Tactician's Rage. This is the quote-unquote Tank Buster that he does. He buffs himself by 50% and slows himself for 9 seconds. So how do we, so basically every time there's Tainted Slash or this, or maybe like when there's both, you need to have a cooldown. Technically, I think you can tank the Tactician alone. Like if it's only one Tactician, you can just tank him with lower cooldowns, like no cooldowns, but you will slowly lose health. The Tactician's Tainted, the Commander's Tainted Slash, you definitely want to have a cooldown for. So ideally, you've like frogged all of these dungeons or watched me do them, and you know exactly what in these dungeons is dangerous. So whenever they have their tank buster, that's when you need to use cooldowns. So you can kind of space your cooldowns out in that way. Having Eye of Tear is super useful for that, in my opinion. The other type of pull is the pull that is dangerous for your group. So for instance, in Gambit, let's say you get to the end and you fight this mob. Like none of these mobs in this entire pull have a single tank buster. You have like accomplices and accomplices which just melee you, which obviously the melees kind of hurt, but they are just melees. You can't like afford to tank buster a random, or you can't afford to cooldown a random melee. Ritualists, which do bolts, which you can kick all of them, and the Starseer, which also doesn't really have a tank hitting thing, but it does summon this Wandering Pulsar, which is basically like an AoE heal check. So in this case, you want to be using your cooldowns during the heal check because your healer is going to be busy healing everyone else. They don't want to heal you. So you should try to maximize like either damage reduction during the heal check. Then outside the heal check, if you're like getting hit a little bit because you have no cooldowns, it's fine because your healer's not busy. They can heal you. All right, and then another type of pull, which is very similar to the first type, but it's basically easier, is a pull that is like dangerous the whole time, but is not like lethally dangerous the whole time. For example, Floodgate. Basically, the whole first area of Floodgate is true. Like the first two pulls, or potentially this pull, if you're doing that pull. Like these mobs, none of these mobs have tank busters, but they are all meleeing you, and they do kind of hurt if they're all hitting you. So you want to have a cooldown rolling at all times, but certain things now count as cooldowns that didn't count before. For instance, Wings. When you're in Wings, remember what I said, your Word of Glory heals you for a lot. You have Tempered in Battle, and in general, you're just getting more resources than ever. So you can kind of heal yourself through any major damage events. Also, you can like rely on your parry way more since you're not going to get one shot. Like all of these mobs hitting you, Prot Paladin is pretty tanky as long as you're in Consecrate and you have block buffs up. You are pretty tanky even with no cooldowns. Obviously, I would still roll Ardent at the start of Wings because it's going to come back. But basically, my point is you can treat like weaker cooldowns as an actual cooldown in this type of pull because you're not going to get one shot. So you can like Eye of Tear, and then when Tear's over, you can wait for yourself to drop low and then use Lay on Hands instead of like Tear into like instant Lay on Hands. It's going to be like Tear, wait the whole Tear, then like 3 seconds after that, Tear falls off, and now you can use Lay on Hands, etc. So basically, you can afford to space your cooldowns out way more in this type of pull, where you're not getting one shot. Now, if you are getting one shot in this pull, then it may have something to do with like how you're positioning, but we can get into that later. But basically, you need to identify, there's 4 types of pulls. Number 1, it's dangerous the whole time. You need a massive cooldown rolling the whole entire time. This is like true of maybe like 3 or 4 pulls in the entire Thunder pool. Number 2, it's dangerous during tank busters. You just only use your cooldowns during tank busters. Number 3, it's dangerous when the group isn't dangerous. So that's like Gambit towards the end, basically. You want to use cooldowns when the group is taking damage. This also applies to a lot of bosses. Number 4, if it's like kind of dangerous, but not omega dangerous, then you space out your cooldowns. Like you don't need to double cooldown where you would double cooldown at other times. That's how we assign our cooldowns. Now we're going to talk about how to save your friends. So Prot Paladin has many ways to save your friends. If you listened before, you would know that I recommend never ever push Word of Glory on your allies unless they're going to die otherwise. So what can we actually do if we're not pushing Word of Glory? So we do have Sacred Weapon. Remember, Tempered in Battle does still exist. It is quite significantly nerfed since it can only proc one time. But if you are fighting a boss and then you give someone Tempered in Battle and then you push Bubble, then whenever they drop below 40%, they are going to heal the full. So that's massive. Holy Bulwark also can save them. You also do have Lay on Hands. Generally, during trash, any trash pull that's remotely difficult for you, you're going to want to have Lay on Hands for yourself. But on certain bosses, like for instance Rashanan or the mini boss right before Rashanan, Lay on Hands is super useful on your allies. You can basically save someone through like one thing through it. Like they get picked once, they have nothing, boom, Lay on Hands, full health, won't die. And obviously we do have 1 minute sack. There's a few ways you can use sack. Number 1, you can play it like the way I have it, it's just on my target. I click on them and I push sack. Number 2, you can mouse over. Number 3, I have a macro here, sack target of target. So let's say you're targeting the boss and the boss is like about to shoot someone. Well, he's going to target that person when he shoots them, and you can just spam sack target of target. This will never go off early because you can't sack yourself. Normally the boss is targeting you. You can just spam this, and then the next time the boss targets someone that can be sacked, boom, you sack them. You do kind of need to know exactly when classes are going to be in danger. Like, for instance, a DK is never in danger. Mages are almost never going to be in danger. They're only really in danger in certain spots. And then some other specs are always in danger. Like, shamans are going to always like be in danger. So you can also have another macro called, I call this sack for your friend. Basically, you can write their name into your sack. So we'll show it here. I think it's sack friends. So basically, the people that I'm actually going to sack, you can literally write their name into it and just push this button and it'll sack them. You can just do this right before the key starts. Whoever you're going to push sack on the most, just write their name in here and just push this button without, you don't even have to mouse over them. You can just push it. So I have a sack friend, sack target of target, and manually cast sack. And we also have spell warding. Generally, if this is useful on yourself, you will want to be using it on yourself since it counts as like one of your many personal cooldowns that are very good. And you're already helping like a lot, right? If you're using Temperate in Battle, Holy Bulwark, sack, and Lay on Hands on your allies like super well, you can usually afford to spell ward yourself. But obviously, it is super useful in a lot of scenarios. For instance, I'll show the two most useful ones right now are, for one, Tazbash Streets, the first boss, whenever you pick someone with interrogation, if they cannot immune it, like mages and DKs can immune it, you can spell ward that person and then won't get caged. Ecodome, same deal. Against this boss, if they're going to get javelined, you can spell ward them and they won't get javelined. Bang. Those are the two main uses of spell ward. I believe that covers most of it. So now we're going to cover movement. So as Prot Paladin, there are a few important things you need to remember when you're moving. Number one, all of your abilities pretty much are ranged. Blessed Hammer, ranged. Judgment, ranged. Avenger Shield, ranged. So you technically don't actually need to be in melee a lot of the time. So for instance, let's say these are the two mobs. When you're fighting these mobs, you don't want to like run straight up to them and be like, oh, hey, I'm the Prot Paladin and I'm fucking in your face. You don't want to do that. What you actually want to do is you want to like since you're dropping Consecrate, remember we have Divine Guidance, we're dropping a Consecrate every 5 globals. So you want to like hit them, then like walk away, and then hit them and then walk away, and then hit them and then walk away. And you want to do that in a circle. So if you're like actually like hard running away, then the mobs are going to like run everywhere and your group's going to complain that the mobs are not stacked. You don't want that. What you're actually going to do is you're going to walk around in a circle. So you're going to like build 5 Consecrate and then drop a Consecrate here and then walk to this side of the Consecrate and then like walk a little circle around your Consecrate. So by doing this, you're minimizing the number of melees you're taking, and you're also keeping the mobs like basically stacked. On top of that, you're also facing the mobs all the time. So when do you actually want to step in? You want to step in, number one, when you're dropping Divine Guidance. Number two, let's say there's a mob that is a tank buster, like this guy is a tank buster, and I really want his tank buster to go on cooldown. So I would push my cooldown and then step in, he tank busters me, and then I go back to walking around in a circle. You never want to just like run straight up to the pack and be like, hey guys, I'm the Prot Paladin, and then tank him in the face. Technically, this is not reducing the damage. Like, playing this way doesn't reduce the damage you take by that much, but it is definitely noticeable. So definitely want to keep that in mind when you're fighting packs. Also, it is super useful that all of your, like, pretty much every single one of your abilities is ranged. The only ones that are, like, actually short range are, like, Eye of Tear and Divine Guidance. So that is an important note as Prot Paladin. I believe that about covers it. So there will be a doc version of this guide. Be sure to stay tuned to that, because in case there's any updates or balance changes or trinket changes or whatever, things can change throughout the season. I will try to keep that document updated. Also, there will probably be like a dungeon specific talent build thing coming out at some point. I haven't made it yet, and it's not going to be part of this guide, but do stay tuned for that. Anyway, that is my Prot Paladin guide. Thank you all for watching. Peace out. 37 minutes.